morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Y-Ship 2023. I am Lisa Kuwahara. I'll be your host today. And today we are holding sessions here in main stage as well as several other spaces in the venue. I hope you will take the time to explore the venue and experience the wave of innovation starting in Yokohama. And let's begin Y-Ship 2023, Day 2, with a greeting from Takeharu Yamanaka, the mayor of Yokohama. Mayor Yamanaka, please come up to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Takeharu Yamanaka, Mayor of Yokohama. The second day of the Y-Ship is now open. Today, we are joined by His Excellency Sibi George, the Ambassador of India to Japan. Also, Dr. Sanjay Sarma, who is a professor of MIT in the United States and the president of Asian Medical School, Asian School of Business in Malaysia, is with us by online. Thank you both for joining us today. Well, since yesterday, key players in Asia and the world have gathered here in Yokohama to develop fruitful discussions from diverse perspectives. I hope these discussions, as well as exchanges with other participants, will bring the discovery of many new businesses and innovations once again today. Currently, urban areas produces 80% of the global GDP and 50% of world populations are from urban cities. On the other hand, urban areas also produce 75% of greenhouse gas emissions, as you know. Global issues, including climate change, are becoming more and more severe. In order to overcome these challenges, it is necessary to facilitate sustainable urban development by discussions and collaborations among variety of entities, including local governments like us, the private sector, the international organizations. In other words, all of you gathered here. In today's sessions, leaders of Asian cities, representatives of international organizations, and students will come together to discuss Asia's sustainable development through the shared context of green innovation against climate change. I hope that all of you gathered here today will contribute to solutions to global issues and the realization of sustainable society. Well, it is my hope that we can start a wave of innovation from here in Yokohama to overcome the diverse challenges faced by cities and promote better urban development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mayor Yamanaka. And next, Sibi George, Ambassador of India to Japan, will deliver a message. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Honorable Mayor of Yokohama City, Mr. Takeharu Yamanaka, distinguished delegates from abroad and from Japan, my dear friends. I am delighted to participate in this convention focusing on climate change and innovation. I thank Mayor for inviting me for this August, to address this August gathering. Before I make my comments, I would like to just mention a few words about India and Japan relations. Over a period of last 20 years, our relationship has transformed from a G to G, government to government, to business relationship, and now to a special strategic and global partnership. We together work for stability, security, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region, bilaterally and plurilaterally. In our special strategic and global partnership, one important element is clean energy cooperation, fight against climate change. And I will dwell upon that a little while later. But as Ambassador of India, I bring to you greetings. Greetings from 1.4 billion people of India. That is 1/6 of the total population of the world. Before meeting you, I was sitting with the Honorable Mayor and I was telling him that India has 1/6 of the total population of the world, but not 1/6 of the problems of the world. We bring solution to the table. We have seen it during the G20 recent summit which we convened and held in India. Despite the challenges of conflict and differences, we were able to bring together the world and produce a forward-looking document which also speaks about sustainable development goals and the climate change issues, and set a roadmap for its to address the issues. As India is also the 5th largest economy in the world, and it is growing at a good pace, I would say. India was growing around 7% before COVID, and it continues to grow 7% after COVID. This growth and this large population has created huge opportunities and challenges, including in the energy sector. India needs to grow. Just to give an example, presently we use 5 million barrels of oil every day. 5 million barrels of oil. We expect that 5 million barrels of oil we consume to grow up to 7 or 8 million barrels a day when India grows from the current $3 trillion economy to a $5 trillion economy. India needs energy. The world needs energy. The major question today is how to industrialize in a manner that also decarbonizes the economy and not repeat the way industrialization has happened in many parts of the world. Produce now and clean up later is not the message. India is not looking for that. India instead would like to, as we grow, we want to continue as green energy country and address the challenges of climate change. India's unwavering commitment to its climate goal is focused on achieving net zero by 2070. In his COP26 address in Glasgow, Prime Minister of India set a target for India. He spoke about 5 elements. I will just mention that. India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. India will reduce the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from till 2030. By 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by more than 45%. And fifth, by 2070, India will achieve the target of net zero carbon emissions. India already achieved its non-fossil installed electricity capacity goal 9 years ahead of schedule and set a higher target, 50% non-fossil installed capacity by 2030. We have seen our commitment also during the G20 summit meeting, which I mentioned. Green hydrogen has in fact emerged as a promising tool in India's energy transition. We have set out a national green hydrogen mission. I'm very happy that we are also working with Japan in addressing most of these issues, particularly on green hydrogen and clean energy cooperation. I would like to mention 3 quick points about the initiatives that Government of India, the Prime Minister, has taken in addressing the climate change issues. First, the LIFE mission, that is Life for Sustainability. When 1.4 billion people in India changes their lifestyle, it would help environment. For example, we have decided to discontinue single-use plastic usage in all Government of India offices. In my embassy, we don't use plastic bottles. We use something like this, which is recyclable. Second, we have replaced all the bulbs with LED bulbs. Again, small step, but big change. Now let me talk about another element, that is the Big Cat Alliance. Big Cat Alliance is another initiative aimed at protecting big cats, that is tiger, lion, leopard, jaguar. It goes on seven main big cats. Again, an initiative which we have taken. We are also heard about India's International Solar Alliance. I'm very happy that Japan is a partner in that, and we are working together with Japan. When we talk about India-Japan engagement in the climate change sector, I would like to mention also about the endeavor to develop energy transition in areas like electric vehicles, battery storage, energy conservation, renewable energy, carbon capture, utilization and storage, CCUS, strategic petroleum reserves, clean coal, etc. We have a clear roadmap in deepening our engagement bilaterally and plurilaterally, focusing on clean energy partnership, Japan-India energy dialogue, Japan-India environmental policy dialogue. Things are moving forward. Of course, we need to put in more efforts, and I'm very happy that today I'm participating in this important event. My greetings to each one of you. Once again, I look forward to working with Japan and each one of you in achieving the target set by our leadership for addressing the climate change issues. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Ambassador George. And finally, we will finish off the session with a message from Sanjay Sarma, CEO and President of Asia School of Business and Professor of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Professor Sarma is joining us remotely. Professor Sarma, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. A real honor to follow His Excellency, the Ambassador from India. These are very special times. I think we have extraordinary challenges around the world, geopolitically, obviously with climate change and planetary health. But there is no time when technology has been more able to take on these challenges. What is really missing is multilateral agreement, technological innovation, and the will to collaborate and cooperate. If you look at CO2 emissions, our options are really somewhat limited. Of course, we need to reduce our emissions, and that is inevitable. And for that, we can either go to hydrogen. There are many categories of hydrogen, as you know, including blue hydrogen, gray hydrogen, green hydrogen, which the ambassador mentioned is probably the most exciting. But there is also this emerging field of gold hydrogen. The idea of green hydrogen is that you get the energy for electrolysis for electrolyzing water from renewable sources, whether it's solar or whether it's wind. But gold hydrogen is very exciting because what gold or white hydrogen, some people call it white, is it turns out that there is a new category of hydrogen called geologic hydrogen. In certain parts of the world, and it seems more prevalent now than we earlier thought, you can literally get hydrogen out of the ground by drilling a hole in the ground. You have to go fairly deep in some places and not so deep in other places. And the reason this hydrogen emerges, almost like fossil fuel, is because of the reduction of water by hot iron, both of which are plentiful in the ground. Of course, getting the geologic hydrogen out requires some technology, safety issues, but it is quite magical. So that is one category of fuels we can go to that can fundamentally reduce our emissions. Of course, the challenge with hydrogen always remains transport, which is you can produce the hydrogen, how do you transport it? And there are, and none of the transport solutions are that exciting. They include dissolving the hydrogen in benzene or toluene, so-called liquid organic hydrogen carriers. It includes liquefying the hydrogen cryogenically, compression, etc. Or it involves turning the hydrogen to ammonia, which is not so pretty. Ammonia, of course, can be burned, but it is itself a toxic fuel, toxic liquid. The good news is that we do know how to transport ammonia. Ammonia is transported for nitrogen. There are ammonia pipelines in the United States. And you could argue that the fact that ammonia smells makes it easier to handle a safety incident because it won't leak and poison the environment without being detected. So the transport of hydrogen is not trivial. Here in Malaysia, there are lots of breakthroughs occurring. The state of Sarawak, the province of Sarawak is investing heavily in hydrogen. We're all very excited both about the production of hydrogen. In Sarawak, hydroelectric turns out to be a very nice renewable way to produce hydrogen. And there's a lot of technology being developed to transport it. So hydrogen is an exciting area. The other, of course, area is electrification. If you have energy from somewhere, again, renewables, ocean, wind, solar being some categories, then electrification becomes exciting. Of course, electrification depends a lot on battery technologies. The growth of electric battery vehicles has been a good sign. I happen to own one. I think it is a really positive sign for the economy. And if other sectors of the economy can also electrify, then there's a big opportunity there. The challenge with electrification is electric battery technologies. And lithium ion has been the staple. Now it's LFP, lithium iron phosphate, which is where most of the automotive industry is going. There are some shortages in lithium ion. Cobalt is a toxic material, but lithium salts are quite plentiful, but there are some shortages. With electrification, another issue is going to be the availability of rare earth materials, both light rare earths like neodymium and praseodymium, but also heavy rare earths such as terbium and dysprosium. Now, as it turns out, I've been working on heavy rare earths for a decade now. And just as disclosure, I sit on the board of a company that produces rare earth oxides. But I do think this will be a bottleneck because we need rare earth magnets to really improve the affordability and the efficiency of energy generation from motion generation from electricity and electric generation from motion. What I mean by that, of course, electric motors, generators for wind turbines. So rare earths is another opportunity and a challenge. Now, that is how we reduce emissions. The question is it too late to save the world by reducing emissions? Well, maybe we have to now focus on pulling CO2 out of the air. And CO2 removal, as it becomes more and more inevitable, as we lose time, there are only so many options for CO2 removal. I mean, I'll only list a few. There are many options, but one important one is afforestation. The idea is to plant trees, because trees, the cellulose in trees, the entire bulk of the tree is CO2 absorbed from the air. It doesn't come from the ground. It's water from the ground, nutrients from the ground, but the CO2 is pulled out of the air. And so there's some interest in afforestation. However, in any of these things, one has to figure out the mathematics. So if you want to pull out the entirety of human emissions with afforestation, you would have to plant trees on an area which is 1.5 times that of the country of China. So a lot of trees. And at the same time, you got to do it carefully because you don't want to damage the grasslands, which actually absorb CO2 and do net damage. The other issue with planting trees is you have to do it in a way that doesn't hurt biodiversity. And finally, there is an issue that if you plant the wrong trees, you may actually increase the albedo. You may actually increase the heat absorption by the earth. So it's not a obvious thing. We've really got to think it through. But really reducing deforestation and perhaps afforestation with the right mix of trees, the local species, may be a very profoundly important area for us as a planet as we try and recover from the damage that we've done over the last few decades, particularly. Another interesting area is ocean fertilization. Again, it's a bit of a sensitive topic. This veers into territory called geoengineering, where you start messing with the planet. And you have to make sure that you don't actually have collateral damage as a result. So geoengineering in ocean involves fertilizing the oceans, encouraging plankton growth, and reducing the emissions of CO2 from the ocean, in fact, increasing the absorption of CO2. And that involves things like iron or phosphorus, or even biological entrance into the ocean. And so ocean fertilization is an exciting area, but again, lots of research needs to happen, and that's why collaboration across countries is important to understand how we affect the ecosystem and not do net damage. Finally, the most direct way to address the ills of our that we have visited upon this planet is to directly absorb CO2 from the air. Literally, you build a nose, where you breathe in the air and you clean it and you pump out clean air. And this is possible. It is being done. It's called direct air carbon capture. And direct air carbon capture is expensive. But in the next year or so, we expect about 1,000 kilotons, 1 megaton absorption capacity. There's dozens and dozens of these methods, these systems being installed around the world. And there are actually a couple of techniques for doing it. One is you either absorb the CO2 into a solid, and there are many solids you can use. The most obvious one is calcium oxide. It absorbs CO2 and becomes marble effectively, CaCO2, CaCO2, which is chalk. But then how much you need a lot of calcium oxide. In fact, there was a company announced yesterday, and I noticed to my amusement that the venture capitalist, of my pleasure, the venture capitalist invested in it as a former student of mine from MIT. And Bill Gates invested in the company. What they do is they put out lime, CaO, calcium oxide, and it absorbs CO2 as the CO2 goes by. It's a slow process. And then what do you do with the chalk, and how much CaO can you find? And so there is, at some point, you got to pay the piper. So what you do is you heat the CaO, the CO2, and you separate the CO2, and then you got to figure out what to do with it. The other approach is to use a liquid absorbent. There are amines, sodium hydroxide. Again, the same problem. Once you pull the CO2 in, you got to separate it, and you got to figure out what to do with the CO2. And that takes heat. So all this takes energy. And so we need lots of renewable, perhaps nuclear, to get around this problem. So we will have to have clean energy. We'll need it to pull the CO2 out. One elegant solution is electrofuel. So what you do with the CO2 that you pulled out from the air is, instead of pumping it into the ground, and that's called carbon capture and storage, as you know, is to actually combine it with hydrogen, which you pulled out, which I mentioned earlier, and to create something called an electrofuel, because the fuel is powered by electricity. And when you do that, you create essentially a drop-in replacement for gasoline or diesel or kerosene. And now you can use regular cars, regular planes, regular trucks. You just put this fuel in, but because you're going to pull out an equivalent amount of CO2 out of the air, you're net neutral. And this may be a very elegant way to get around our infrastructure crossover problem, and one which can come into play fairly soon, assuming we can master the challenges of CO2 extraction, master the challenges of H2 production, and find clean energy to power it all. Because if we use coal to power it, then we would have done even more damage. So look, it's been a pleasure. I really wish I were in Yokohama. I love Japan. In fact, I'll be there later on this month. I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Salma. And again, please give a round of applause to our three speakers. Thank you.